Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode. Welcome to my channel if you are new here. So if you're familiar with my past videos that I've been doing, I've been having a spot of trouble with this 64 standard Beetle. And the biggest problem I have is it has an oil leak. And since I built the engine, which was about a year and a half ago, it's been leaking oil. And it seems to be that the leak is coming from the oil cooler. Now, I have put a later style doghouse oil cooler on here, and what's different with that is that it's offset from the fan shroud, which means each 4 cylinders cool equally and it doesn't run through the cooler before it cools the number 3 cylinder. Now, this later style cooler actually has 4 oil seals as opposed to the earlier ones that only have 2. So for some reason mine has been leaking. With a little bit of investigation, it seems to be that my oil pressure is a little too high, which would indicate that maybe it's too much pressure on the seals and therefore leaking. Now, I have a box of goodies here from Peruzzi. So what's in the box? So, I have a new oil pump. Now, it seems that the oil pump I have on here, which was from a previous engine that I had, is a little too big for this engine that I have. So I've gone ahead and ordered a standard, I think it's a 23mm as opposed to, I think this was a 30 or 32. So this should bring the pressure down a little bit. So if we open the box, so this is from Peruzzi. And it is the Febi brand, which is very high quality. Here is the new oil pump. I did also have problems with the one that I had on here, that it was fouling the tinware. So on the one that I have on there, this case is actually a lot thicker because to compensate for the size of the gears. So one thing I have to do to this before I install it is I actually have to drill and tap this to block off the outlet, because I am running a remote oil filter, like a conventional oil filter that you get on a more modern car. So that basically redirects the oil. Instead of going straight back into the case, it redirects it outside of this. I have an outlet on the cover that then goes to the oil filter. So that's the first thing I need to do. Okay, today is a new day, and actually as I was filming yesterday, I realized that there were some things I needed that I didn't have with me, and they were at a friend's place in storage, and he was away. So luckily, a friend of a friend helped me out. So I don't know if you've watched another previous video I did on when I was having problems with my gearbox knocking. Lovely friend of a friend called Cotton had the parts I needed. So yesterday I drove over there yesterday afternoon. Absolutely lovely guy, super helpful. And I'll explain to you what I needed. So here is the new smaller oil pump. So this is a 26mm, which is a standard size pump for a 1600 air-cooled Volkswagen. So what I need to do, because I have an external oil filter, which is not standard on a standard Beetle, the oil flows out of the cover rather than back into the case through this hole. So what you need to do is you need to block this hole. In order to do that, you need a tap. So this is quarter 18 NPT, which is National Pipe Thread. Is it national? I don't know. And I basically have to cut a thread into the outlet of the pump and then plug it with one of these aluminium plugs. So then the oil will flow out of the cover into the oil filter back into the engine. So that's what we're going to do first of all today. To determine which hole you need to plug, the gear that is removed that fits into the end of your crank, that's the top gear. So the bottom, or the hole in the right hand side, is the feed in, and this is the feed out, the smaller hole. So this is the one that we're going to tap and plug. So I've put some soft jaws in the vise. These are made from aluminium, the same as the pump, so it doesn't damage it. So we're going to clamp that in the vise and tap this. Okay, so luckily you don't have to drill this hole out any bigger to be able to put the tap in, because usually when you tap a hole you have to drill the hole to a certain size to allow the tap to thread properly. And yeah, so luckily you just have to go really gently and make sure that the hole is pointing directly upright, and just really take your time, go backwards and forwards. So you cut a little bit and then you back it off, and what that does is it cleans the threads out. Otherwise it can bind, there's too much material that it cuts off and it binds together. So it's always good practice to cut a little bit, then just back off and then go again. I'm not using any lubricant on this because it's cutting really nicely, and you can just feel it cleans the threads, and you can see that it's just going in nice and easy. So the next thing I need to do is clean all this stuff. You really don't want any of this going in your engine. It will get into the bearings and cause you all sorts of problems. So take your time and get this super clean. Okay, so the next stage is to plug the hole. So I have these MP plugs. These are aluminium, which is great because the pump is aluminium, and aluminium and steel expand at different rates. So it's a good idea to use the aluminium plugs in your case and in your pump. So I think this is the size we need, and we only need that one. And I'm also going to use this pipe sealer from Worth, and that should do the job. Okay, with the case all nice and clean, I probably should have removed the other gear when I tapped it, not to get swarf all on it, but I didn't. But it's all nice and clean now. I have the new plug. It's actually an imperial size Allen key that you need for this, and it's actually quarter, so 1/4 inch fits in there nicely. Metric was really loose, so bear that in mind if you're doing this. So a little bit of the pipe sealant on here, don't have to go crazy, and that goes in just nicely. Look at that. Okay, that's as tight as I dare go, and you can just see that this is sitting a little bit proud of the case of the pump, so that's not good. I have to take that off, and a lot of that is due to the fact that this tap is tapered, so I can't get the thread in far enough for that to be flush, but it's no problem. We'll just file a little bit off really gently because we don't want to damage this case, and then we're going to be good. Okay, so there you have it. You can see it's nice and smooth now. Okay, so now with the pump ready to be installed, I also purchased this tool from Peruzzi, which is an oil pump puller. Now, of course, I could make one of these, but this was only just over €5, so it's not worth my effort to make something like this. So I've never used one of these before, but I get the idea how it works. So if you remove the gears, this T-piece fits inside here somehow, because now we have one blocked off. Is this going to work? Well, we'll have to figure that out. And basically this goes onto the engine case, like either side, and then you tighten it up, which then pulls the pump out. But of course, like I said, we've blocked off one of these holes now, so hopefully. Also, one thing to note, which I noticed, is that these gears have a little dot punched in them. And on the one where the gear doesn't remove from the shaft, the dot is on the inside, which means it goes in against the case. So I didn't take note when I pulled these out because I hadn't noticed. So I'm just going to put the dots together before I put this back in like that. I also mentioned to Mr. Cotton yesterday when I was there getting the taps and the plugs about the problem with the oil leak, and he agreed that the oil pressure is too high. And he has lots and lots of spare parts. He also had one of these oil cooler stands. Well, he had many of them. So we looked at the seals I've used, and it looks as though I used the correct ones. And also it looks as though this does butt up right against the case of the engine. So I bought another one from him. So if this pump change doesn't solve the problem, I have to take the engine out again because the seals may be damaged after leaking, I don't know. But I'm going to use this one just in case the one I'm using is, I don't know, warped or has a hairline crack that I don't see. But I'm also going to smear the aviation sealer on this face that goes against the engine case, which I didn't do previously before. And also I'm going to use a little bit on the seals, which I have done previously, but it didn't fix. But I think if I add some here as well as a extra protection. Right, moving over to the car. I can't be bothered to put it on the lift, and it's easy enough to get to. So, what do we need to do to get to the oil pump? So first I'm going to remove this panel. It's not removable on most Beetles unless it's been modified to do so, but it makes my life a lot easier. And it's good for the video as well because you can see exactly what's going on. So let's remove everything so it exposes the oil pump. With the valance removed and the rear tinware here, next thing to take off is the pulley. So I'm going to have to undo this one to take the tension off of the belt, and then I'm going to use a gun. I think this is a 27mm socket on here, and then I can remove the pulley. I don't think I need to remove the exhaust, hopefully. So let's get this lot off. It's actually a 30mm socket for this. Just a tip for you, if you don't have a gun to loosen this bolt off, it's best to loosen this off while you have the belt attached because it's going to hold the pulley still for you. With the pulley out the way, you can clearly see the pump cover. So I have a CSP cover, which goes into my full flow system for the oil filter, which sits behind here. And you can see on the end here, there's a bolt that fits in the side. And this has a ball and a spring in there, which is like a pressure relief valve. Now, I actually backed this off with an extra couple of washers to relieve the amount of pressure being pumped by the pump, because it just feeds it back into the sump if I back this off, and it did bring the pressure down a little bit. But with the new pump I can remove these washers and it will work as normal. So you can see here the thickness of the pump, and this, you can see I actually had to grind off the end of the nuts because it was fouling with the pulley. So the next thing to do is I'm going to put a bowl underneath to catch the oil that comes out, and then I'm going to take this cover off. So there she is, the big ass mofo of a pump. So the next thing is I'm going to remove these gears, and then we need to loosen off a couple of the case bolts, because the case is basically pinching the pump and you can't just pull it out. So you have to loosen at least this one, and I think there's another one under here. Yeah, I can feel it. So you loosen those off, and then we'll take these gears out, and then we can fit our tool in. And I'm not sure if it's gonna, it should fit in here without taking the exhaust off, I think. Okay, with these two bolts slackened off that hold the case together, I have inserted the T-piece, and like I said earlier, it's only gone into the inlet because the outlet is blocked with the plug. So I'm hoping it will pull it out. So everything's attached, so I just need to tighten this nut up now, and hopefully it will pull the pump out. Fingers crossed. Right, it's just started to move, so it's a bit awkward, like I said, because only one leg of the T-piece is pulling it out. But I've just been tapping the side of the pump with a nylon mallet just to try and get it unstuck. And I also loosened off this one as well, and it's just cracked loose and starting to pull. So hopefully, and this is also a cast iron pump, not aluminium like the one we're putting in. So let's compare the two pumps. So like I said, this is actually cast iron, it's very heavy, and this case is made from aluminium, and it's the same configuration type of pump, but you can clearly see the difference in thickness of the case. So if we compare the gears to one another, it might not look a lot, but it makes a lot of difference in how much pressure it is creating. So here we have, these gears are 30, it's just under 30 millimeters, and then this should be 26. So 26. So hopefully this is going to solve my problem. I'm very skeptical, but because the pressure's too high, this has to be changed anyway. You can also see that it has a little groove here, and this goes on to the right of the when you install it, and it has like a little pressure release thing there, so bear that in mind. So that's the top where the gear fits into the end of the cam. As I was comparing the two pumps, I'm a little concerned, because if you lay this face together where it butts up against the case, this new pump looks like it's a little bit deeper, like the part that fits into the crank. So I'm hoping that I have bought the correct size for my engine, but there's only one way to find out, is by trying to fit it. The other concern I have is, because this is now thinner here, that the studs I have in the case are going to be too long, so I might have to trim them down. I also bought the correct nuts to use to tighten the pump in, and the difference between these and normal nuts is that these actually have an O-ring seated into the nut to help it be leak free, which is what we want. We want it to be leak free. I just cleaned up all the surfaces on the case and on the cover, and I will need to use 2 gaskets that basically sandwich the pump together, and I'm going to use the aviation sealer on there as well. And here we have the gaskets. So this one fits against the case, so that goes on this side of the pump, and the one with the little holes in, that goes on the outside of the pump, because these holes line up with this little pressure release thing. So bear that in mind, and I'm going to use this aviation gasket, and I really hope I have enough in here, because I've used this to build 2 engines and other leak stopping activities. Okay, so the new pump is ready to go in. I did actually apply some to the side of the case, and then I referred to the book, and it said do not add sealant to the side of the case. I guess it makes it really hard to remove the pump if you have to, because it will be proper glued in there. It says if there's a little splash on there, it doesn't matter, so I've just wiped it off. So bear that in mind as well. If you think it's a good idea like I did, then it probably isn't. So hopefully when I remove this paper towel, a lot of oil won't drip out, but and also bear in mind that this goes at the top, so I can see the oil rushing out already. Okay, maybe I should have drained the oil before I did this, but I didn't. So if I can soak up as much as I can, hopefully I can slide this in. Okay, we have a problem. As you can see, the pump isn't actually going in far enough and seating against the case, and I don't know why. Like I mentioned earlier, when I looked at compared the two pumps, they looked like they were slightly different lengths, so I guess that is causing a problem. Okay, take 2. Right, I've just got back from visiting Mr. Cotton again and picking up another pump. So I actually bought the wrong pump, and the cam that I have is what is referred to as a 3-bolt, means the pulley that goes on the end of the has 3 bolts, simple as that. So let's compare the 3 pumps we have in front of us. So let's start with the pump that I actually removed from the car. So this is a big cast iron 30mm pump, which is for high performance engines. So that's what I removed. And what I bought was a standard 26mm pump for a 4-bolt cam, I believe. And what I have now just gone and purchased from Mr. Cotton, who is so helpful and saved my bacon once again. This is the same size pump. It's a 26mm, but this is for a 3-bolt cam. So as you can see, the actual body here is thicker than the one I was trying to fit, hence why I couldn't push this far enough into the case to seal against here. So now we have a bit more meat, but as you can see, the depth, if I put these 2 faces together, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but this one sticks out further. So if we compare this to the one that I took out the car, you can see if I put these faces together, they now stick out the same amount. Also, I must add, I didn't actually have to tap and plug this one, because he kindly had already done it for me. So isn't that super? So I can just throw this one in the car. The one thing I have noticed though is the inlet on the new pump is smaller than the inlet on the other 26mm pump. And Also, the one that I've taken out, the 30mm, that's also a really big inlet, similar, or looks exactly the same size as that. So again, I hope that this is right. Okay, I was just texting with my friend Yanni about these intake holes, and he said that this is fine for my case. This is for a 3-bolt cam, like I said, so he said that that should be fine. I don't need to drill it out. Also, I asked him about these dots, and he basically says it doesn't matter where they go, just as long as the dots are facing the case of the pump. So put them in that way, basically. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? So, this time I drained the oil because the oil was obviously seeping over the top, and I tried to get away with it because I'd only just put fresh oil in it a couple of weeks ago. But it's a good idea to drain the oil because now we don't have that dripping over the side. I've added a new gasket to the new pump and obviously put it both sides, so we're ready to slide this in. So the hole in the pump case goes at the top, so it goes this way, so you have your inlet on here, on this side, and then your blocked off outlet on the other side. I'm just going to add a little bit of gasket sealer to the case as well. You can see here, this is where your oil comes in, and the oil used to go out through here, but this is also blocked off in the case to have this full flow system. There we go. And hopefully this time. Oh yeah! Look at that. Perfect. Let's see if the gears fit in. Okay, so we're now ready to put the gears in. So as you can see, you have this end that fits into the slot in the end of your cam, and that of course will drive the oil pump. But before we put these gears in, I'm going to smear some grease on them. And the reason being is when I first fitted this engine, I had no oil pressure. And what happens is, if you don't grease up these gears, there won't be any suction. Basically, the pump will be sucking just air, and it won't form like a vacuum to pull the oil through when you first start up. So a good idea is if when you build a new engine and run it for the first time, or start it for the first time, or in this case change the oil pump, it's always a good idea to disconnect the coil so the car won't start, and you just run it on the starter motor for 20 seconds or so to build up oil pressure, and then you're ready to go. Otherwise, if you start with no oil pressure, then bad things can happen, but we'll deal with that when we start this. So I'm going to fit this gear in first, like so, and then you just give it a spin until it locates like that. Bit of grease on the other gear, and then I locate the dot. So the dot is on this side, so we put that facing the engine, like so. Maybe I'll pack some in there. Now just clean off the face of the pump. I just use a little bit of brake cleaner and clean this surface. So I'm just going to put the aviation seal on both sides of this. Right, with the gasket in place, and I just added a little bit of sealer to the cover as well. It's now time to put this on, like so. Next up is the washers and the special nuts with the seals in. Now, it's a good idea to also add some sealant to these. And now we can start tightening these up with a 13mm socket. Now, the torque settings for these is, I just converted it to Newton meters. I believe it was 12 Newton meters. My torque wrench doesn't go that low. I think I can get it down to about 15. So I think we'll snug these up, but the 3 bolts that go in the case, they should be tightened to, I believe it's 20 Newton meters. So I'm just going to snug these down and get the pump like pulled together, and then we'll start doing some torquing. Okay, with these 3 nuts now tightened up to 20 Newton meters, and these to my best judgment, the next thing I'm going to do is put everything back together, put some oil in here. Okay, it's now time to add the oil, and I also removed the oil pressure light switch from this hole here, and I connected to it an oil pressure gauge. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the HT lead from the coil to the distributor, so there will be no spark. And now what I'll do is I'll connect the battery and turn the engine over for 20-30 seconds, and hopefully it will pump the oil through and we'll get oil pressure. So that's great, we have oil pressure, which is good news, and I'm going to leave this now connected, reconnect the coil and start the car up. The next thing I'm going to do is, I realized that this is a later 1600 engine, and I believe on the later engines they should have the pressure control valve like this mushroom shape with the longer spring. So this is at the back of the engine just after the oil pump, and then this is like the oil pressure relief valve that goes at the back. Now, when I built the engine, I put 2 like this in, when in fact I should use one like this. And I also bought aftermarket springs. So I don't know if the aftermarket springs are heavier duty than the original ones. And of course, I'll put a diagram up now, but basically this little mushroom thing actually allows the oil to flow back into the sump from the oil cooler. So if I'm using one of these and it's blocking that path off, then maybe that's causing slightly higher pressure. Okay, so you saw that the oil pressure did indeed drop a little bit. I just took it for a test drive and it just drives absolutely fantastic. But I've decided I'm going to drive this thing this summer and just keep topping it up with oil. Anyway, thanks ever so much again for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave me a comment if you have any ideas that might help solve this problem. But until next time, cheers.